Margaret, looks absolutely fabulous there in the winter light on your terrace.
It is. It's absolutely a beautiful day outside, and I would be outside on the terrace, but we're overlooking a tennis court, so you can hear lots of balls being whacked around in the background.
Fabulous. And I'm dialing in from Cabo, where I've my curtains drawn and everything because the sun is just beating in. So I guess, Margaret, before we jump in and talk Costa Rica, just to kind of frame our whole conversation for everyone. Here at Real Estate Trend Alert, we identify places on the up, places where some big trend is going to create an opportunity for us to make money from real estate. So I'm talking things like a big new coastal highway that's going to open up a previously inaccessible part of the country. Now, in particular, there's two places in Costa Rica right now where you can buy fabulous real estate that will make a great home and will also give you the potential to make money through both capital appreciation and rental income. So on that note, Margaret, maybe let's drill into some specifics.
And we're going to start with Arenal. And this is a place I think that both of us really like spending time in. And it's a kind of place that you'd expect when you first go there. It's so incredibly beautiful that you expect to find tons of tourists. You've got a 33 square mile lake. It's framed by hills and mountains and volcanic peaks. It's incredibly beautiful. But for whatever reason, and I know this is something we've discussed multiple times, it's overlooked and it's undervalued. So tourists tend to go to the eastern side of the lake, to the town of La Fortuna, which isn't even on the lake. They go there for hot springs resorts. They don't go anywhere else around the lake. And because of that, you can actually find lakeview property for prices that you probably thought you'd never be able to afford. And I think what's so appealing for me with Arenal is you have lots of upsides. It's got a very small town feel. This isn't big city vibe. It's a place with lots of little restaurants, little cafes. The Lakeshore Road kind of meanders around the lake. You can stop off, take in the views. Great place if you like fishing, windsurfing, boating, being out, just outdoors, hiking, wildlife watching, whatever it is you're into, you can do it here. And there's already a group of expats here who are very active. They get together regularly and they're very welcoming to newcomers. But as I said, this place still has a very much small town rural vibe. And I know that when we first went there, the big opportunity that we could see immediately, there were a few possibilities in Arenal. And I think before I get into that maybe a little bit more, it's ideally located. Often when you come across places that are overlooked and undervalued, it's because they're really hard to get to, but you're like 90 minutes from an international airport in Liberia, and you're around 3 hours from the international airport in San Jose. So this isn't one of those stories where it was a place that was so tough to get to, nobody went there. This is simply a place that's purely overlooked. And I think the big opportunities that we could immediately see when we first visited were probably buying Lakeview lots, prime Lakeview lots. And this is something I know you yourself will concur with this. 12 years ago, 13 years ago, you could go along, you could buy half an acre, maybe an acre lot for around $50,000 with good lake views. And with that kind of a budget, you'd actually have had a choice of Lakeview lots. But in the last 5 years, supply of those has simply dried up. They're rare as hen's teeth, as they say. And it's something that's becoming increasingly difficult to find. And I know that's something you've written about, for example, in Real Estate Trend Alert, that keep your eye out and look out for prime Lakeview lots.
Yeah, and if I could just chime in there, Margaret, as well, you know, in Arenal, because you've got that slight elevation, because you've got the breezes, you know, it rains a lot at times, you know, you can look at a hillside, and sometimes I think I'm in Ireland, other times I think I could be in Switzerland. If you don't want the kind of the heat that sometimes can be stifling of the lowlands, Arenal is just a fabulous option. It's green, you have mists, you've pristine, beautiful, warm, sunny days, you've cool mornings, you've a much more varied weather experience. And Absolutely. I mean, I think we nailed that recommendation back a decade ago to buy the primest view lots. Those have by and large now been snapped up, and that the market's at this kind of interesting point in that the deals are found by identifying a motivated seller. And these motivated sellers can happen in two guises. First of all, it's someone who just needs money fast. And, you know, unfortunately, because of the crisis that we're in at the moment, there are those people who just need money fast. And there isn't the footfall of traffic. There isn't the numbers of real estate shoppers, you know, driving through town right now to sell to. So if you're a cash buyer and if you're ready to act, it's a good moment. And then secondly, Arenal is full of very kind of, let's call it, personal homes. These are homes that people came down 10, 15 years ago and designed and built big homes to their tastes. And what we know, whenever people create homes to their taste, the likelihood is that it's not going to be to the taste of 80 or 90% of your prospective buyers, which creates a big problem when you go to resell. But the thing is, if you can step back and if you can look at the bones of those homes to add a bit of creativity, you can snag an absolute bargain, because a lot of people are put off by resales because they don't like some of the personal touches. But that means that you can snag a crazy bargain. And some of these homes, these bigger homes that were built, you know, 10, 15 years ago, many of them come with big pieces of land, because these were people who came down, bought small ranches 20 years ago, built a home. And the other play that you can make with these homes is to literally separate the home from the garden, divide the garden into lots, and in some cases you could recoup the entire purchase price of the home just by reselling the lot. So
that's exactly what we wrote about in Real Estate Trend Alert, where there was a 13-acre property with a 3,000 square foot house on it, and the house was in great condition. Move-in ready, you didn't really need to do anything. It was not one of these crazy customized ones. It was actually a very nice house, and it was in a small private community. House had amazing views. There were 13 acres around it. A smaller, not as nice home in the same community was on the market at the same time for around 240,000. The house plus 13, and that was with a tiny piece of land, just literally a yard. The house with 13 acres was listed at, I think it was 385,000. And the play, as you say there, was to take that house, keep a certain amount of land around it, then hive off maybe 1.25 acres here and there, sell a few of those for maybe 80 to 100,000 a pop, get your money back, and you'd essentially have a free house and a big chunk of land. And that's something we've come across on more than one occasion in Arenal, this idea where you could actually get real estate for free.
Yeah. And I remember another occasion, Margaret, you and I with some junior colleagues walked through a guest house that was being fire sold. And this was a big sprawling home. And I believe it sold in the end for only $150,000. And I could see our junior colleagues were just cringing. It was gross and it was cluttery and it was weird. And I could see both our eyes just lighting up, because this person was maybe asking 180, 190, and it come down from much, much more. And they just wanted out. And we could just see all that potential, you know. I mean, literally a tart up, and you were probably in the region of grossing 50 or 60 grand a year in operating it as a guest house, and you're only into it for 150 grand. And then there was the other opportunity we saw on that last trip, which was a restaurant and cafe with 6 chalets behind it. Again, this is what we call the 7 or 8 year itch. Expats come down here, they move to places. I'm not just talking about Arenal, it happens all over the place. Frequently they come in waves, frequently they leave in waves, because often they're moving on to the next place because they're the front line of adventure. And then you've got these types of real estate that need a very particular buyer. often there's a component of operating them as a business or refreshing them. It's absolutely not for everyone. So there's a very limited market. And when you've got a limited market like that, your negotiating power is extremely strong. And if the seller is then motivated, you know, you can snag a bargain.
And I think the last kind of opportunity that we could always see in Arenal was land banking. And this is something we know a fair bit, I would say, about in this particular area. Prime lake views, it's something that's always going to have value. There's always going to be someone who's looking for that prime lake view. So if you can find, and I know they're becoming increasingly difficult to find these days, if you can find a good piece of property with future development potential, then that's something to keep an eye out for as well, particularly if you come across a motivated seller.
Yeah, absolutely. But buy at farmland prices, land that's going to have development or tourism potential down the line. One of the best plays I know.
So lots of opportunities and plays in the real estate market then in Arenal. And now we're going to move on to a very different part of Costa Rica, the southern zone. And I always remember my first ever, I think it might have been my first ever scouting trip overseas. And it was way back, I think in 2007 in Costa Rica. And I had a driver taking me around, and he normally dealt with tourists, and he didn't understand why he had this crazy foreign woman who didn't want to go and look at monkeys and didn't want to go and see parrots and didn't want to go to the beach or do all those touristy things. And after about 4 or 5 days, he finally got his head around this idea that I only wanted to look at real estate. And he started to come up with suggestions, you know, hey, there's a really good community over here you might want to look at. But then at the end of the first week, I blew whatever progress I'd made with him when he said, and where are we going next? And I said, the southern zone. And his face just absolutely dropped. And he said to me, no point going there. There's nothing there. It's going to take us forever to get there. The road is terrible. And I just thought, I've been on bad roads before. You know, this isn't the first time for me. I'll be fine. And I can honestly say it was probably the worst road trip I think I've ever been on. And it was so bad that I actually left him drive back to San Jose, and I got the little puddle jumper plane, which I did feel slightly guilty about. But at that point in time, the southern zone, which is probably one of the most amazing parts of Costa Rica, was almost impossible to get to because of this terrible road. And that all changed in 2010 when a new coastal highway went out from San Jose, a new coastal road it linked up with, and you can now breeze down in 3 hours from San Jose to the southern zone. There's one section that with the old road, it took, I think, 2.5 hours for me to drive it, and it's now 20 minutes. So that just goes to show you how much difference a new highway can make. And the big difference it's made is that before, the southern zone really only attracted kind of adventurous types who wanted to go down there to go surfing, to go wildlife watching. More than half the land is in national parks and reserves. It's incredibly beautiful, huge mountains that kind of drop straight down to the ocean, mile after mile of deserted beach, tons of wildlife. Everything that people want to go to Costa Rica for is in the southern zone. And now it's accessible to more mainstream tourists, probably for the first time. And that's had a huge impact on real estate in this region.
Yeah, I mean, I think by the time I got there, which was, I guess, 2010 or 11, the highway was open and it was just pristine, and I just glided on down, at least probably as far as Dominical. And I mean, those photos you sent from that trip, it is just kind of mind-blowing. It was like an explorer entering just the outer reaches of a hidden kingdom. But you know, there was still, it was still established in some kind of very frontier sense, you know, even back then.
It was crazy French people. I'm not quite sure why, but it seems to be that crazy French people had already gone down there, set up little businesses. This was the mad part. You got down there was this horrendous road. You couldn't really get there, but then you got there and there was this great place that you could go and buy fresh baguettes. There was a delicatessen where you could buy everything from champagne to caviar to fine cheese. Really nice places to eat. So it had this kind of frontier vibe, but it was also terribly chic at the same time. And that's kind of carried on. And with the highway access, I'd say what we have both noticed, in particular over the last 3 to 4 years, is this is a destination that's getting more and more high end. The hotels that are going in are kind of, $500 a night, $700 a night, crazy prices compared to what you were paying maybe before the road went in. And it's an indication, I think, of the type of tourist it's now attracting. And of course, that lack of road access for years had one huge upside, which is it protected it from overdevelopment. And the rules and regulations that are in place now are aimed at protecting the environment. So that's a really, really big plus for anyone who doesn't really want a cookie cutter experience, anywhere that's really horrendously overbuilt, high rises, drive-through malls, stuff like that. You're not going to get it in the southern zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just that kind of economic moat component. Land is so scarce there. There's no new land that can be built. And basically, you just can't convert land to development land there, because it's either protected as part of a national park, or it's protected because of the vegetation and wildlife on it. And right across the globe, there is just this boom and bubble in what I wouldn't call it a bubble, just this huge surge of demand for luxury hotels and luxury boutique hotels in particular. Here in Cabo, in the last 5 years, $5 billion of new super luxury hotels has come in. We see the same in Tulum. We see the same in this part of Costa Rica, but it's just concentrated in these really, really tiny boutique experiences. And the reality is that globally, demand for these experiences is surging, and there's just very, very few places that have the mix of pristine natural environments, safety and security, and most importantly, accessibility. That's the formula that makes this work, and that's the formula that makes these best-in-class places, or places that are highest on the desirability scale, so valuable. Both valuable as an experience for you to enjoy, because the value rests in their intrinsic value, but then also value as an investment opportunity, because in time, more and more people are going to want this, and there's just very, very little of it available.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the big things that's really appealing about being in the southern zone, is the fact that you have all this nature on your doorstep. You have all this protection, this moat, as you say, around you, where things just can't be overbuilt there. And the way to profit from real estate in the southern zone is essentially how we've done it in Real Estate Trend Alert, is essentially by piggybacking on a developer who got in there before the road, before any of the development or the high-end stuff started to come in. And she started buying land in the 1980s. So not only was she buying it in the late 1980s, early 1990s at prices, farmland prices back then, but she also got to grips with the planning and the permitting and how you need to do things. And that is, you can't state how big of an advantage that is over anyone else trying to come in and do what she's doing. They'd literally have to charge so much more for exactly the same product. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Just you are getting the benefit of her close on 3 decades of investment. And again, just this thing that you can buy a lot for, say, 120 grand, that's amazing ocean views, or RITA members have been able to buy lots at this type of price point. And just the costs of repeating that, if we were to drop in out of space and to try and create a community like this, by the time we've bought the land, put in the roads, you'd need to be charging a minimum of $250,000 to $300,000 just in costs to replicate it. So she has a huge advantage because of what she's created. As RITA members, we've been able to piggyback that advantage because of the pricing that we've been able to negotiate on lots. And the thing about what we do at RETA is effectively we come together to pool our group buying power, and that allows me to go and sit down with the developer and say, hey, you've got 70 lots over there, give RETA members a killer deal on 30 of them, and then you can sell the rest, you know, for 20, 30, 50% higher to your regular market. And we come in, we move fast, we get an amazing deal, the developer gets fast sales, and then she can make her margin on what we call the retail sales.
And that's your capital gains. And then the interesting thing about the Southern Zone, we've talked a lot about high-end boutique hotels, but the reality is because of the tight permitting here, the biggest hotel has 21 rooms. You're not going to come across your famous brands, your Hyatts, your Marriotts, whatever. They're not there in this part of the world. It's simply not possible for them to do that because of the permitting regulations. So there's a huge plus for anyone. Bizarrely enough, most people who build here, who do build a house, decide not to rent it out. I think in that particular community we've been selling in, there's probably 250 plus homes built. I've only ever seen maybe a couple of dozen for rent at any one time. But anyone who does want to rent out can really make a killing in short-term rental.
Absolutely. And as you say, that's another interesting phenomenon about investing in a market where people build their own homes and homes that they're very personally attached to, because as you say, very few of them rent. There's a real shortage of rentals that's being exacerbated now by this work from home trend and the fact that people are just craving and looking for everything that Costa Rica Southern Zone has: healthy, clean air, the fact that no matter what's going on in the world, you can get out and walk down to the village or hike the mountain, eat fresh food, all these things, all the sense of freedom and the sense of control over your air and your food and all these things. Costa Rica Southern Zone has it all, and there's very few people renting nice homes. So, you know, boy, do those people who rent down their charge a premium for that.
They do, and we know of people with 3-bed homes who've made $60,000 plus a year in gross rental income. And the interesting part is your overhead, your running costs are actually very low in terms of things like property tax or community fees in this particular community. So your gross, there's not really too much to deduct from that to get your net either.
I think you've hit it all, Margaret. I guess just to say it again, you know, in these two places in Costa Rica, you can both, you know, make the play of finding your dream home, a place where you want to spend time, a place where you might want to live, and also where you can buy significantly under market and where you can buy a home that could be worth a lot more when it comes time to sell on. And I think that's very important, because even if you're just buying a second home, even if it's primarily motivated by a place to live, you know, it's still a significant portion of your nest egg. So you always want to protect that investment by buying extremely well wherever that is.